Actually, I'm not a student anymore, but I used to major in advertising and public relationships in Taiwan, and I'm working in UK as a digital marketing advertiser. So there's two questions I wanted to ask any of the professors. So the first one is we're talking about public televisions in Taiwan. So correct me if I'm wrong. So the main issue, like one is to select the board members. The second one is previously the PTS, they try to produce like high definition programs, which is good for everyone. You know, so, like it requires a lot of funds. So they have been doing fundraising. So the fact that aesthetically, do you think that one of the issues of public television in Taiwan is the structure? Because they don't have advertising, so there is no like anywhere else they can do fundraising, and also the fact that their reach and also frequency or the like influence is much more smaller than the mainstream television channels. Yeah, so that's the main question I would ask about the structure of the PTS. The second one is about like what we're talking about, like Professor Monique was talking about the 5 references. One of it is to rely on the digital media because we see like internet can bring all the people together. But we're being too over-rely on digital media, and also as you can see, we're all in this, to be honest. We are blessed, and also we are lucky to have the right to study here. So we get exposed to the latest like information or how we're going to reform the society, but is it we're being too optimistic, or is it we were becoming over-rely on the digital media?
Thank you. So I will ask Monique to answer your second question. So who wants to answer the first question? Finding or?
Well, I was going to say something about
Gary.
the digital.
Go.
If I can say something about the digital.
So I'll answer that.
Yeah, I'll answer the digital one. I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's very easy to believe that new communications technology is the panacea to all of our problems. You know, we hear about this nonsense of the Facebook revolutions in the Middle East and everything else. When we have to remember that the revolutions in the 19th century, it spread around Europe in 2 weeks without mobile phones and without Twitter and without Weibo or whatever it is. It's too easy to believe that the social media are a solution to all of these problems. And also, I don't think that they are a solution to the problems of accessing information either. I mean, the days are gone when we can surf the internet. I remember when Windows came out and they said, "Where in the world do you want to go today?" Well, none of us have the time anymore to surf the internet. None of us have time to go through the millions of pages and sites. We all use the same sites every day. We all know, we all go to Google, we all go to Wikipedia. Well, my students go to Wikipedia. And what we also find is that in terms of news organizations, we tend to use internet editions of the news media that we would use if we were buying a newspaper or watching TV. So I would buy the Guardian newspaper, but I use the Guardian online. I go to the BBC site. The idea that we're all accessing alternative sources of news and information from all over the world is not sustainable in the evidence. And also there's a question of how do you authenticate the information that you're getting? How do you know it's reliable? I can go onto someone's blog and get some information. I can get into a taxi, and the taxi driver is going to tell me his opinions about politics. Doesn't mean it's right. It's a valuable opinion, but can it be trusted? Is it credible? Is it fact-checked? We have to rely on a mediated information sphere in order to make sure we're getting information that we can depend on.
So, Monique, can you answer the question about the funding of the public TV in Taiwan?
No, I don't really know.
Oh, okay, fine.
I couldn't fully answer that, but as far as I know, the budget of the public TV in Taiwan actually is less than 1/10 per citizen. In Taiwan, actually, good journalism really need investment. So we didn't, I don't know why the Congress or whatever reason.
But when they first set up the public television, they put in the CTS under the same group. The CTS is the television station which can make money. So the income from the CTS can subsidize the public TV.
I have
But
no idea about that. That's the number, I saw 2 years ago. Okay, but I think the public TV has other issues, I would say that actually, besides they haven't figured out the non-partisan rule of selecting the board members. Actually, I'm not sure whether you noticed that actually the development of the news program in PTV actually is put on low priority. Yeah. So the so-called good quality program is the non-news program. I'm sure you understand that actually the news channel is the main channel of the so-called public sphere. So before this issue got solved, I would say that we really need the dual track of media reform, the public media and the private media at the same time. And as far as I know, many of my friends, they got involved in the media reform movement, a long time ago, all the students, actually protest against the media monopoly. I think they have been too concentrated on the public reform on the public media. So they will say that the reform within the private market is really too complicated. We'll do that later. But I would say that, right now we really need to do that at the same time.
thank you. So who wants to be the next? Yes, please.
Hello everyone. My name is Peter. I started something called a World Culture Association a few years ago to present artists, to present minorities, cultural groups, to allow them a voice on stage. So I've been organising events, and of course I feel like you can't avoid this issue of China being, you want to depoliticize it, but it's impossible to ignore that because inside of China you have to look at how the minorities have been treated and actually how China has developed. And I've been putting on programs with Tibetans and the Uyghurs, and I'm trying to not be political. It's very, very difficult because the injustice they suffer is totally undeniable. But what I want to ask is it really possible, do you think, for Taiwan to really continue with its own identity? I feel like the original Chinese traditions are so important because it's the base of all the Oriental cultures. Is it possible? That's number one. Number two question is the individuals who are taking the monopolies of the media. Where do they actually stand? Because if some of them stand pro-China and some of them are pro-democracy,
Okay, thank
that would
you.
be good.
Yeah.
Okay, I would say as a Chinese citizen living under the threat of, I won't say from China, from Beijing, of course I'm really sympathize to the so-called anti-China or anti-Beijing sentiment. But I would say that, we understand that that's the main forces pushing the movement forward. But now the Congress is controlled almost by the KMT party. So if you want to have bipartisan support, strategically try to depoliticize that, Do you know what I mean? To think about the infrastructure reform, no matter it's a China threat or US threat, or whatever threat, we need to have a good infrastructure. So I think that's more a strategic move. So I won't say that the China impact or China threat is not important. Obviously, that's a very important sentiment behind all the students or the intellectuals. But once you talk about that, Taiwan is really such a divided society. You will have more, maybe like half of the people or many intellectuals. They will they already stand against the so-called anti-media monopoly movement.
Okay. Yes, please.
My name is Nora. I'm a student at LSE studying politics and communication. My question is about the Fair Trade Commission, because in all the debates that it is not mentioned that often. And my question would be, what impact does the FTC actually have? Because I don't have any information on that. Does it have the power to prevent the media merger from being completed? Or is there the chance that the FTC actually says no to the media merger?
Okay, thank you.
Right, okay. So the Fair Trade Commission.
Yeah.
Now, because actually this is about print media, and so it become part of the Fair Trade Commission. At the moment, NCC is talking about changing certain regulations. For example, to look at cross-ownership. And that will then allow NCC to have the capacity to deal with all sorts of media merger. But at the moment, there is no law to allow NCC to get involved unless it's to do with broadcasting. And that's why this particular case is under Fair Trade Commission. Fair Trade Commission do have some teeth, but they also have to work within the law. And so it's whatever the law and regulation available to them. So for example, they are actually delaying the case, the signing, based on the laws that are available to them. So for example, this is such a complicated case. So actually they are now, the delay is actually asking various consortiums to give more detail about all the companies they own. So for example, the Taiwan Plastic Consortium also owns various media cables and print medias, and the Zhongxin also have it. So in other words, putting all of them together, this is really a very, very powerful media concentration and deal. And so, but the businessmen are very, very clever. So for example, Tan Yanling's ownership is 32%, and this actually is through calculation. So in other words, everything is by law. In fact, it's very difficult to say this is not to be passed. And so Fair Trade Commission can do whatever they can, but has to be lawful. And that's why I think, take a long-term view, is Taiwan's media regulation has to be reformed, revised in order to catch on whatever is actually has to be happening.
Yeah, I want to come back to the previous question about mainland China. And I think that, I study soft power. I study public diplomacy and soft power, especially Taiwan and China, soft power and public diplomacy. And approaching this question from that angle, this is sending out a very interesting signal to the mainland Chinese, this whole debate. You asked about the identity of Taiwan. I think that Taiwan's identity is very clear and simple. Taiwan is the first Chinese democracy. And I think that this issue, this problem that Taiwan is suffering at the moment, and the way it's being debated by civil society and by others, is sending a very clear signal to China, in soft power terms, that democracies have problems. And democracies have problems, and it generates interest within civil society, which can engage in peaceful protest, who can then engage with politicians and try to resolve the issue. So I think in terms of the China factor, I think that this is sending a very positive signal to the dictatorship in China, that democracy is a powerful force.
Okay, thank you. Next. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Won Shen, and I'm a law student at City University London. I have two questions. The first one is perhaps for Dr. Monique. And she mentioned earlier that there is a risk of the Taiwanese media somehow kowtowing to the government and sort of somehow becoming more and more influenced by the government and becoming essentially another kind of the PRC style a kind of development, and I was just wondering, because we have seen in the Lebanon Empire and some cases in the West, and how the government in turn somehow, sort of, it's the kind of pressure that goes the other way around. And what's her view on if Taiwan is somehow an exception to the general cases in the West, and perhaps, just for the uninformed in this room.
Can I ask you to stop right over there and let Fan answer your question first?
Okay.
Okay.
I haven't got his question.
Yeah.
I don't understand the question.
Oh, okay. Because you mentioned earlier that there is kind of a general danger or risk of